Okay, everybody, welcome back to the Move podcast. I'm your host, Lance Armstrong, alongside my co-host, JB Hager. As always, the Move is brought to you by our good friends at Patron Tequila. Pretty clear today who our Patron of the day is going to be, and Jakob Fuglsang. Before we get into the action of the race, if you're watching this on video, you'll realize that we're not at the We Do studio. We're not at Disney World. In fact, we're right here at my bike shop here in Austin, Texas, Mellow Johnny's. I think, and I'm pretty sure about this, the coolest bike shop in the world.
I know people, obviously it's a destination, like an Austin tourist spot now, but even if you look on my Instagram, which is JB in ATX, I was shooting some videos from the basement.
Shameless plug to get some followers.
Kind of. But the underbelly of this shop, like as big as it is on this floor, there's as much going on downstairs. And it's just fascinating.
Well, there's 10,000 feet up here and there's 10,000 feet below us. So all the service and inventory and offices are all down below us, as well as Brant Speed's training studio. And then we just put this new fitness concept in there, the barcode. I haven't done it. I heard it's a real ass kicker.
And for the record, Lance was down there doing some shopping.
Yeah.
There's like racks of new inventory.
I was like, this is so cool. I just started taking stuff. That's what you get to do when you own the place. Anyways, let's get into the details of the race. Look, it was. I thought it was. I want to stop short of saying it was boring, but it was.
It's hard on the heels of last week.
Yeah, it's very hard.
Anything be as exciting.
Yeah. But Jakob Fuglsang, who's been, 35 years old? He's been around for a long time. It was former pro mountain biker. I actually raced with him for a few years. Just a powerful demonstration today. He was, as we saw last weekend, he was third in Amstel Gold Race. Midweek, he was second in Flèche Wallonne, and this week he went one better and won today. And it was not even, all the people, I guess. Maybe an even bigger story is who didn't show up. I mean, you had Alejandro Valverde drop out with 100K to go. You had Julian Alaphilippe, who just 3 or 4 days ago was by far the strongest rider in the race, and now he was out the back. And so perfect for Fuglsang.
Yeah, Fuglsang had to be so happy not to be running into the finish with Alaphilippe.
Yeah, I think it just demonstrates how hard it is to maintain your form over the course of a spring season or a spring session. I mean, he's won 9 bike races so far this year. He won Milan-San Remo, he won Strade Bianche, he won Flèche Wallonne, has won a bunch of stages and other 4 or 5 day stage races. And you just saw it today. Like, you get to this point where you just run out of gas. I mean, the body just can't keep performing at that high level. And this is probably his last race for a while. He'll take a period of recovery, but he just didn't have it.
Yeah, people work really hard to peak their fitness for a grand tour, which is something you would do. You were peaking for July. Alaphilippe comes out guns blazing in a very long classic season, and at the end, you just like out of gas. And then Fuglsang seems to be coming into his peak. Like, if there were 2 more races, who knows? But he seemed to be coming into his best form at the very end of the classics.
The most exciting thing about, I don't know how many of y'all standing here watched the race, but he launched the attack that created the final group of 3, and then he essentially rode them off his wheel and was alone, had about 30 seconds. And the last downhill into Liège, which was probably 10 or 15 Ks to go, and it's then raining again, so the roads are completely wet. He is just totally hauling ass, and I'm like, what? Just chill out a little bit here. I mean,
he had plenty. You feel like he had plenty. He could just ease
And there
up.
was this moment. It was a little tough to see on TV because the lens on the camera was wet. But I don't know if you guys and gals saw this, but I don't know what he hit, or maybe he hit one of the white markings on the road. But his bike was literally sideways, going probably 35 miles an hour. I don't know how he kept that bike up.
At that speed, in that turn, wet pavement, anybody else would have hit the dirt.
Yeah, I mean, I think...
And so he was, like, to your point of him, like, why are you going so fast?
Right.
He was taking some risks.
He was definitely taking risks.
And he's surely getting time checks in his ear, but that almost took him out.
Yeah. No, I don't think it's wise or prudent to take risks like that when you have 30 seconds. But I can't believe he stayed up. Obviously, as I said a second ago, he was a professional mountain biker. I think you get a guy that's technically good on a bike, it obviously helps. Most people don't keep that bike up, and it's a yard sale across the road, and you lose a monument. You don't win the race, even with 30 seconds.
Well, it was a remarkable win, and big for him being in contention the last 2 weeks.
It was interesting too, and I looked it up on the internet. Here is we spoke a lot last week about Amstel Gold Race, when a race that's in Holland, you never think about it being that hilly. Last week they had 12,000 feet of vertical climbing. Today was only 7,800. When in my mind, if you think of Liège-Bastogne-Liège, you definitely think that is a harder race, but there just wasn't the sheer volume of climbs, and so it's still a hard race. I mean, 8,000 feet or almost 8,000 feet is still a lot of climbing, but to imagine that it's 4,000 less than Amstel is hard for me to get my mind around that.
Mm-hmm.
But
it's the only soggy classic we saw.
Yep.
This whole spring. And
that makes a big difference. I mean, on the coverage, they said when they started the race, it was raining in 3 degrees Celsius. So 3 degrees Celsius is in the low 40s.
Oof.
And rain.
And as you've said,
and you got a six and a half hour day.
Yeah, half those people quit right then at the line.
Oh yeah. Well, at the end of a long spring campaign, and then you're stuck with low 40s and rain.
They're done. They're checking out.
That just sucks.
Right and left. And I had never noticed this before. Tell me if this has been around a while. And you saw it as Fuglsang was time trialing into the finish, the little fender underneath the seat post.
Yeah, I've never seen it either.
I've never seen that.
I mean, I've seen them in training rides.
Yeah. But I guess it deflects some of the spray of water on your back. And I asked, he didn't answer it yet, but I asked Lance, does that really make any difference when water's hitting your back?
I think if it's in the 40s, the longer you can stay dry, the better. If you get wet and it's in the 40s, it's a vicious cycle. And so, look, I don't think it's not your traditional fender that you would see from somebody that rides their bike in Seattle every day, but it was enough to probably keep a little bit of that water, the spray from the rear tire, the rear wheel, off his back. And even with a Gore-Tex jacket or a really rain-proof jacket, every little bit helps. I've never seen them, rock something like that in a race, much less a classic like this. But definitely the key there is to stay dry.
You always forget that they're changing a tire as the conditions change. It was wet all day, dry at the finish, and we saw Woods had one leg warmer on. Clearly he was peeling off clothes, and the race went down.
And the race started, and he was like, "Oh shit." And so I've never seen anybody ride around with one leg warmer on. Right. It was a day of first. Never seen a fender, and this dude's rocking one leg warmer and one shoe cover. But if the race is happening, I mean, you just got to go. And so it looked funny. But hey.
Last Danish winner was in 93.
1993, the great Rolf Sorensen. Who was an amazing classics rider and won a lot of bike races, but it's been a minute since the Danes came through here. Oldest classic started in 1892. Imagine riding around there in 1892. And also, it's a very historic part of the world in terms of world wars and the amount of lives lost there over those years during the war. And so they said on the TV there's like 8,500 graves from the soldiers from the war. And beautiful area. I love that part. It's a race that I always wanted to win. Never did.
What was it about this race? I mean, obviously you don't show up at the start line if you don't want to win a race, but
yeah, you do. Because they pay you to show up at start lines. You're like, I don't give a shit.
What was it about this race that it was on your hit list?
Yeah, I mean, it's for a Grand Tour rider, it's the most suitable monument. And it was also towards the end of the spring campaign, so you're starting
timing-wise.
Yeah, you're starting to eye your preparation for the tour and where your fitness is and where your competitors' fitness is. And it was just one that I always wanted to win. Never did. Was close quite a few times, but my favorite story is 2004. I swore I had it. I was riding great, and I used to do this thing where if my seat was not set where I wanted it in terms of from left to right, if the nose
Just so
was,
people know, you ride with your seat a little off of straight.
yeah, it's a little. It has to be a little bit left, just a little.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure
for obvious reasons. I think that's why. But so anyways, if it was a little right or if it was straight, then I would take it, and the mechanics hated me for this. So I would just take my hands, and with my right hand I'd hit the front of the saddle, and my left hand I'd hit the back. And that seat will move. I mean, even if it's tight, you can get it to move. And so and the mechanics would always be like, dude, just stop doing that. I was like, just chill, this is fine. And so I had done this enough on this particular seat post and seat that in 04 I get away with another rider and I feel amazing. I'm like, I got this shit, but like it's over. And the next thing you know, I'm like, something feels funny. And the epoxy or whatever that holds the seat post to where the rails, the seat just starts moving. And next thing you know,
how far from the finish are you when this is going down? This is in the last 10K?
No. Probably 30 miles to go.
Okay, but it's going down.
It's going down. And the seat, it was like it was on a turntable. So nobody's probably ever done this before, but it doesn't work very well when that seat is not totally fixed. And it just got worse and worse and worse. And so they were right. Those mechanics were right all along. I shouldn't have done that.
Imagine that.
I would have won Liège-Bastogne-Liège. I'm honestly, I'm pretty sure about that. And it was just next thing you know, I'm on a turntable. I'm like, what? I'm such an idiot.
For the most part, it was a pretty safe race, but we did see Hessink go down, and the damage report was not good. No,
so apparently we're getting word that he broke his pelvis and his collarbone. Yeah. Little known fact about Robert Hessink. So I built a home in Girona, Spain, somewhere in the 2000s, early to mid 2000s. He bought the house. Well, actually, somebody bought it from me, and then he bought it from them. So he now lives in my old house in Girona.
And it just keeps getting passed down through cyclists when.
Yeah, you know. Love to see what's I heard he took down we had these really badass draperies, and I heard he took them down.
That's not cool.
Well, I don't know if it's cool or not, but it doesn't make any sense.
Does that happen though? When because we've talked about how cyclists set up shop. When you were based in Austin, because of Motorola history, a lot of guys started basing here. Nice, Girona. Now a lot of American cyclists are down by George in the southeast in Greenville. Does that happen a lot in Europe
I think
too?
it does. I mean, guys like to have training partners, even if they're on different teams or competing teams. They're still friends, and so you'll have training rides at some of these hot spots or sort of these little pockets of Cyclingville where you'll have 5 guys on a training ride, all on 5 different teams, and and from all over the world.
From other teams did you train with?
Nobody. No.
You made it sound like everybody does that.
Well, I didn't do that. Everybody else does that. I didn't do that.
You trained with a lead car.
A follow car,
or a follow car.
No, I needed to be alone most of the time. A little alone time, JB.
Yeah. Okay.
I still need alone time. It's like therapy.
We got to reflect a little bit more on the classic season as a whole, which we found to be very, very exciting. I mean, this is our second year of covering it. I'm learning a lot about the classics. I hope everybody that follows this podcast is as well, and taking more of an interest in things other than just the Tour de France, right? Mm-hmm. Your sort of summary thoughts on this classic season?
I mean, I think between Tekunik, Quick Step, and Astana, that was really the theme. I mean, it was they dominated this entire spring campaign, and I thought it was exciting. It was interesting. I mean, you have certain big budget teams. I thought Team Sky was, you have to say it was a disappointing spring season for them. Trek, who I rag on every week, was just in a different race. I mean, they weren't even in these bike races. So you get these big budget teams that I'm sure are questioning what's going on. I mean, the other big headline, which he was slated to race here, was Peter Sagan, and raced Flesh Wallone last Wednesday, which I thought was an interesting decision for him to do. Didn't ride well there, didn't ride well all spring, and then pulled out of Liège before the start. So I'm sure he, in his mind, is trying to figure out what is going on and can he get it back on the rails or back on track for the Tour.
And then we just have to spend a little bit more time as we're wrapping up our classic season. Alaphilippe, just phenomenal.
Yeah, the guy's won 9 bike races. I mean, he's
unreal.
Yeah. It'll be interesting. You get these guys. I mean, we'll see what happens with Van der Poel, if he indeed stays with a smaller team. The other thing I love about our audience is, man, when we screw it up, which we screw it up all the time, they always let us know. So we said everything wrong last week. Did you know this?
What did we get wrong?
We said he was on a Dutch team. Well, it turns out it's a Belgian team.
Yeah.
And then we said, what else did we mess up? This dude, what was that guy's name, Higgs, who emailed us? Anyways, this guy emails, it's just like correction. I'm like, whatever. It's Hollywood. I mean, it doesn't.
Hey, it's.
So
people are listening. That's a blessing, and please keep correcting us.
Absolutely,
we deserve it.
Yeah, and we'll keep messing up. I promise. But the thing about I was going to say about Alaphilippe is as I said on the broadcast today, and I had not heard this. There's a smaller French team that is not in the Pro Tour, just below. They're in whatever division that is. I'll mess that up too. Direct Energy is offering him 4 million euros. So you get these teams that are so dominant. They have seemingly 10 leaders. You can't keep 10 leaders, and so they get heavily recruited to go to other teams. It'll be interesting to see if that happens. You take a guy like him, put him in a smaller team that obviously doesn't have the horsepower of Quick Step. How does that shake out for him? But
well, if you have a big budget and you're not winning, you probably start not only poaching riders but support staff too. Who's their trainer? What's going on?
Well, we're seeing that happen. I mean, this guy, is it Ellingworth or what's the main sort of scientist, coach, trainer at Team Sky, was heavily recruited, I'm sure, by a lot of teams, but he's now going to the team Bahrain Meridia. Then you just follow how all of this goes down. Nibali is going to Trek. So here Trek again, they're going to hire a 35-year-old guy and like 8 of his friends. He's 35, okay? Bad idea. And then Bahrain Meridia is recruiting Landa. Well, where was Landa 2 years ago? At Sky with this trainer fella. Mm-hmm. So you can start to see how that's going to play out. I would be really long Landa's stock and Bahrain's stock.
When you talk about them recruiting or bringing over a guy that's 34, 35, I mean, we see it in U.S. sports where they just try to put together an NBA championship, for example. Like they're going with experience over youth just to get it all into one season. Yeah. I mean, is that what they're trying to do?
Who? With the Nibali?
Yeah, I mean, if you're recruiting and bringing over an older rider, it's just like, hey, we're just gonna. Let's try to pull something together next season instead of developing talent.
I think in this game, 35 is not to say it's not possible. I mean, you saw Jacob Fuglsang he's 35 and dominated today, but. That's on the outer limits of being able to win a tour. If that's what if you're trying to do that or you think you're going to do that, I think that's not realistic.
Yeah. Well, we're going to do some Q&A, so start thinking about any questions you might want to have for Lance. But we want to touch on a couple other things, including a big announcement.
That's right.
We'll get to that in a second. Unfortunately, we had another incident that took someone from the cycling family, Damian Dropek.
Yeah, so his dad has been a big supporter of cycling. Actually was a title sponsor of a pro team for many years, and then partnered with Cannondale for a couple of years. And so tragically, his son, who I think was only 30 years old, was either had studying to be a doctor or was a doctor, hit head on in Australia, just outside of Melbourne, a couple of days ago and killed. I mean, to think, well, look, it's a dangerous game. We know that. It's dangerous to go out on the roads and train. But it hurts more when you have a guy that's invested a bunch of his own money, a bunch of his own time, his own energy into this sport. And for him to lose his son out on a bike, of all things, is that one hits close to home.
Yeah, no doubt. A lot of people, as when right after we launched this podcast, just over 2 years ago, a lot of people kept saying, "Are you going to cover the Giro? Are you going to cover Vuelta? Are you going to cover more?" And that's a challenge, right?
Yeah.
Spending 3 months of the summer doing this every single day as opposed to one. But we think we've come up with a solution to give people more.
I mean, for me, JB, I can't watch bike racing that much. That's just too much bike racing.
Right.
So that was our answer all along was no, because Lance doesn't want to watch any more bike races. So we have come up with a solution, and as we were just kicking this around in and amongst our team, and also with trusted people around us, they said, look, you do need to create content in and around those events if you want to look. This all started with covering the Tour de France for 3 weeks. It was a smash hit. We're like, what are we going to do for 49 weeks?
Right.
We have to make something up. And so we started talking about this stuff. But so we've come up with a great solution for the Giro, and it actually has a twist. So my old friend, my old trusted advisor, the greatest, I refer to him as the greatest coach in the history of sports. He's got 9 Grand Tours under his belt. Johan Brunel is going to be coming on board, and the twist on it is that these shows that you and I do, whether it's around the classics or the tour with George, those are more recap shows. Mm-hmm. So, and this was actually your idea.
So Johan, undoubtedly, undeniably, one of the best, if not the best, master tacticians for especially Grand Tours. So the show's going to be different. We didn't want it to be exactly like our recap show with you, me, and George. So Johan and I are going to get on and really, we're going to talk about what happened today, but we're really going to look at what is going to happen tomorrow.
Right.
And what I like about this is, again, it continues to help grow interest in other races besides the Tour de France, Right,
but you all are going to get the perspective of, you're going to get Johan's perspective of, and say we put him in a role of, say, Johan, you got to pick 3 teams or 3 directors, and what would you do in those situations? What is the team meeting like in the bus if you're that person right before the stage? And I mean, this interesting insight, and Johan's very excited to do it, but he is truly the best that there ever was at that game.
And some people may remember when you had the series, the TV series for a while where it was following the road, right? And you would see Johan in the bus addressing everybody before a race. Like that, I think that's some of the most fascinating stuff I've ever seen. And so that's what we're going to really try to focus on is like, okay, if you're Team Sky and he's the director, what would you say to them? What has to happen? Mm-hmm. And then the next day he might really focus on another team. It's like, okay, now they're a little off. Maybe they lost this key player. What do they have to do to adjust? I think it'll be great.
Yeah, it'll be exciting.
So that kicks off May 11th. May 11th, we'll probably do some sort of preview show. And then when time permits, you're going to join us on that show.
Absolutely. When I feel like watching a bike race. They have some hard days in there. I'll watch those days.
Yeah, maybe one of the, some of the more exciting days. You can jump in with us. So that's coming May 11th.
Yep.
And
day before
preview
Mother's
show
Day.
A couple days before, 1 or 2 days before that.
My name's Greg. I came up here from New Braunfels just to see you in your shop. And you had mentioned earlier that you just show up at a starting line because you get paid to show up. Have you ever had a race where you didn't want to race? And if you did, how do you motivate yourself to compete?
Oh boy, yeah, there was a lot of races I didn't want to.
I'm sure.
Be at, but look, over the course of a season, especially as the run up to the tour, you have to have race days, right? And there was always they still to this day talk about it. How many race days in the legs, and so. We always wanted to have 40 race days, roughly 40 race days in the legs before the Tour de France, and you couldn't have done it if 20 of those days you didn't want to be there. You can't prepare yourself. You're not prepared enough with 20 race days, so you just had to get the race days in the legs, and that's just part of the job.
Cool. Thank you.
Yep.
Hi, my name is Amy, and I just had a question of, if you had a dream team for the TDF, who would your team members that you would pick for that team, the current cyclists?
This is going to sound like I'm bailing out a little on the answer, but if you look at those teams in 04 and 05, those were dream teams. You had just between George Hincapie, Vyacheslav Ekimov, and Chechu Rubiera, that's the reason we were able to dominate for so long, because those guys, and then of course over the years you had other guys come through the program, but just if I think about just those three pillars of our program, I was never going to be isolated. I was never going to be in trouble. I was never going to be sort of just left to my own. And so obviously a guy like George, who's was a great friend and did all 7 tours, is those guys were just always by my side, and as the team evolved over time, we were just it was the equivalent of being able to finish somebody else's sentence, and we just knew where to be, where how we all our styles, our weaknesses, our strengths, and so we basically, and to Johan's credit, he was the one who evolved this team and built this team over time, and also keeping in mind, there were years that of 9 guys in the tour, we had 7 different nationalities, so it was to manage language and to manage culture and expectations, and that's the thing that he did so well.
Thank you.
I'm going to add to that. Unlike a lot of sports where you would just have your dream team of stars, in cycling that doesn't work, because you have guys, when you say this was your dream team, that will bury themselves for you. And that doesn't work with a bunch of star guys, lead guys, right?
Right.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, this is Eker. So, what was your average speed in the Classic of San Sebastian?
What was my average speed in San Sebastian? Gosh, you got me there. I don't. You never. You're in trouble when the kids walk up and start asking questions. Because we did this podcast in Fort Worth, and the kid roughly your same age, says in front of all these people, he says, "Tell us one thing that nobody knows about you." I'm like, kid, get out of here. But I don't know. I don't know what my average speed. I could probably look it up. But I don't, one time I finished last in San Sebastian, one time I finished first. So when I finished first, it was faster than when I finished last, I promise.
Thank you.
That's cute.
My name's Rich. My wife and I, we came down for the Paleo FX the other day from Chicago. And we came in yesterday to your store here. And we were just blown away, first of all, with the service.
Yep.
She bought some clothing here. So first of all, hats off to Aaron and the crew here. We're just phenomenal. Second of all, they had mentioned, I just, out of the blue, I said, hey, is the man going to be here? And they said, actually, he's going to be here tomorrow. So we made another trip. We skipped the conference, came here in hopes to see you. And
You said you're getting married tomorrow? Is that what you said?
No, we skipped the conference and came here
conference.
in hopes to meet you. And,
right on, here we are.
And just throw out a comment more than anything. I've been involved with the Tri-World for many years. It goes back. But I had it, I retired a couple years ago from GE after 36 years, and I was in the sales business side of things. And one of my key customers was a big cyclist, and I was doing the dues before the tries, and I had an old Coors Light Classic result booklet back in early 90s, 91. And the first name on there was a 19-year-old from Plano, Texas. I wish I had the book, and I gave it to the customer. I would have had it. If I would have known, I would have had it here for you. You probably have a copy of those or two, but
No.
anyway, that was one thing. The other thing, again, fan from everything. In my estimation, if you would have went to Hawaii, you would have had it, number one.
I don't know
That's all
about
I
that.
gotta say. I'm just saying me, but I'm sure
The thing
there's-
about that, the thing about Kona is that a lot of people think that. I mean, that year, 2012, I finally figured out the half Ironman distance, and but it took me a long time to figure that out. I never did a full. So you can't look at it on paper like the guy can swim in the front group. The guy was the best cyclist in the world at one point, so he's going to ride away, and then he can run 255 or whatever I could run. But I don't think that game never gets played out on paper. That game gets played out on the roads with diet and nutrition, hydration, and I guarantee you I would have screwed it up, and I would have swam front group, and I would have ridden strong, but I would have been crawling on the run. Which I'm really glad I didn't have to do that. Actually, it was sort of a blessing.
Well, I would have been cheering for you. I just want to let you know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Esther. I'm from Chicago. We dodged a bullet. You know, there was a snowstorm yesterday. We're
Oh, wow.
so delighted to be here. Yeah. So I'm a
Snows in
rec-
April, and
I know. Mother Nature's not
Oh,
our
my
friend in
God.
the Midwest. That's for sure. You mentioned that unfortunate tragedy in Australia, and I'm a recreational rider, and I've noticed there is an increased amount of road rage against bikers. What are your thoughts about reducing this?
what was the last part that you've noticed?
Road rage against bikers.
Oh, road rage.
Definitely increasing. It's scary out. It's scary.
Oh, I
out
tell
there.
you, I don't like riding with cars. I hate cars. And well, I mean, I have a car, so. But I don't hate cars as much as I hate scooters. I hate scooters. I took some pictures driving here this morning. You should see this shit, JB. I mean, have I mentioned before that how much I hate scooters? But so where was I? I don't know if it's so much road rage. I think but also just the biggest issue is distracted driving. And here I was the guy that just said I was taking pictures driving over here, but I stopped to take the picture. I promise.
Okay.
You know, it's just a reality where people are distracted. They're looking at their phones. They're just not focused on not just a rider, but a walker or a runner. And look, my hope is that in the future, as autonomous cars become more and more possible, you know, if you imagine a world where every car is a self-driving car, I mean, there's still work to do, obviously, because they're having accidents, but imagine that they perfect that. Nobody's ever going to get hit. That car will not hit a bike rider. Think about it. I mean, but right now, when I go out biking, it's just, I get so nervous around cars. But
Which safety in numbers on
I
group
think-
rides with
yeah.
your local bike shop, right?
Yep. And I think that's why we're seeing a big rise in gravel participation and gravel bikes. And I mean, you can just look at the industry selling more and more gravel because it's you're away from cars. It's kind of nice. Mountain biking, away from cars.
And you're out there by coyotes and mountain lions and bears. Good luck.
Yeah. I'd rather be with bears than cars, I promise you.
Get close to that.
Hey Lance, Stephen from Liverpool, England. What was your relationship like with Alberto Contador, especially around the 29 tour?
Yeah. No, it wasn't good.
So it's true what they say.
Yeah, I don't know. There's no love lost there. We never came to blows, but it was close a time or two. What went on in that team bus that year was not good.
Which is to the point earlier, a dream team.
Yeah.
You know, who's
Well, and he was look. Having said that, I mean he's an exceptional rider, and he was truly exceptional. So, at my age and having taken a few years off and probably not as motivated and inspired as I should have been, I mean he was so much better than me that year. And so, personalities aside, that was his best tour. I mean, 2009 was his most dominant tour. And he just basically did what he wanted to in the bike race, on all levels. But physically, he was exceptional.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm Alex. I'm up from Houston. My question is, I was watching the race today and saw that exciting moment where Fuglsang's bike goes sideways. What goes through a rider's mind when you see that, or when you see a buddy go down, and how do you come back from that and finish strong?
Well, they asked him about it in the post-race interview, and he said it was a much-needed shot, a dose of adrenaline right before the finish. And you better believe. I mean, you just can't. I mean, I think he's probably thinking, "Thank God I kept this thing upright," because I don't know how he did, but he did. But very, very thankful and scared. I mean, all those guys are scared. I mean, you're going down a descent like that in the rain. I promise you, everybody's scared. Nobody goes down those things like they're driving in a car going 20 miles an hour. We are all scared. He was scared. So, but everybody's scared. Better than going down that same descent with 50 people around you. That's even scarier. But I think, again, it was hard to see on TV, but I suspect it's, now as the technology, whatever you want to call it, the way we build roads, the way we manage traffic, does really greatly affect bike races. And so whether it's road furniture or all these little traffic control mechanisms, roundabouts, poles, planters, that's completely changed the face of bike racing. And so, and also, pavement types, how much oil they leak, paint, the stripes on the road or any of these markings. Any of that white stuff you see is like ice. You put water on it, it's like ice. You can't. So I suspect he hit a chunk of that, and that's what sent him sideways.
To reflect more on his question, and luckily Fuglsang had enough of a lead, but those kind of incidents could put you in a bit of a panic where you're trying to calm your heart rate down. Because when you're time trialing to a finish like that, you're trying to keep your heart rate under control, and that sends you in a major spike, I would guess.
He's a calm guy. He was always very mellow in the peloton, and he's also 35 years old, so he's been doing this for a long time. That makes a big difference. That's very different than being 25 and having never been in that position. He has experience to manage that.
Cool.
Hey there. So with 3 really significant long races like that over the course of 7 days, what do you do in between to recover and then to also be prepared to have, response from your legs whenever you're doing 250K 3 days in a week?
Very difficult, and you saw it with Julian Alaphilippe today. I mean, we can talk about how he's had such a great spring season, and maybe the gas tank is empty, but it's hard to race. I mean, the Amstel's 265, today's 265. Flesh is a little shorter, it's about, I think it's 230 now, but
just 230.
Yeah,
just 230. But I mean, 3 days in between, so it's very hard. It's very, very hard, and nobody goes through that and feels fresh. I mean, most of those guys do all of them, so they're all in the same boat. But you can't not have residual fatigue through the week.
So what's like an off day? How many hours? An hour? 2 hours?
Oh, the days in between?
Yeah, no riding at all?
Probably varies. I mean, you'd be surprised. I don't think it's an hour. I think it's more. I think a lot of times, I think it's more about the intensity. But it's better to get out there and keep moving. Obviously, they're not doing any quote unquote workouts. They're just turning in the legs. But there may be one day off and then some longer stuff. They all go out and preview the course. So they were spending the days in between, previewing the final of today's race. So that's what they'll use as their quote unquote training.
Gotcha. Cool. Thank you.
Good morning.
Is that a beer?
That's Topo Chico.
Okay, I was like, man, what time is it? I like this guy. What?
Yeah. You were talking
11:48. He's having a topo, but it's not. Yeah.
It's almost noon on a Sunday.
Yeah, it's almost time to switch over. You were talking about road infrastructure, and that just got me thinking about, you're a prominent citizen here in Austin. Austin's got a lot of transportation issues. A lot of cities are probably dealing with this. What do you see your role as kind of a prominent public citizen? Austin's going to be revamping its transportation in the next 2 years, maybe advocating for more protected bike lanes or yield at stop signs for cyclists, policies, that kind of thing.
Look, we're in a tough spot in Austin. I mean, the city elected probably 40 years ago to to not invest in infrastructure. And then overnight, it became the coolest city in America. And everybody wants to build a moat or have a drawbridge. That's not going to happen. People are, I mean, I think what is the latest stat? 100 people a day move here? 100, and most of those 100 people have cars.
And it doesn't look like it's going to slow down anytime soon.
It's not going to slow down. And so now we're trying to go back and put Band-Aids on the situation. I mean, the fact that we don't have hardly any east-west corridors in this city is crazy. I-35 is a disaster. You know, huge project on Mopac. We've already outgrown that. That took like a century to do. But the issue of bikes and especially downtown here is, look, I always look at a place like Portland, Oregon, right? Or even Lexington, Kentucky. Portland, Oregon won't build a mile of road without a mile of bike path. Think about that. And bike paths are great. They're even better when they're totally protected, whether they're elevated or there's some sort of barrier between the car and the cyclist. You know, we built the bike path out east, which that's where I go all the time. I'll make my way over there through East Austin, and then you've got 7 or 8 miles of no traffic. And so, if we can keep adding to that, which I think they're supposed to extend that bike path out to one of the parks, but that would be amazing.
Would you see yourself as advocating for that?
Oh, yeah. I don't know. I'm always for making biking safer, so I'm happy to help any way I can.
Thank you.
I also think we should work on the green belt. I think we should dedicate some resources to making, because the green belt is so technical and just
if you could tame that thing.
I mean, it's just a rock hard. But if you could tame it a little bit, you could really create along Barton Creek there. You could create just such a great, flowy mountain bike trail that gives you another opportunity to ride your bike without cars. And even then, you can hike, you can run, you could be out there. But I do think the city should invest a little bit in the green belt.
Hey guys, so I am following you on Instagram, and you always post these cool messages when you're texting each other before the races, like who you got. I got Alaphilippe, I got Nibali. So with Giro d'Italia being right around the corner, I got Primož Roglič. So I wonder who you got.
For the Giro?
Yeah.
I haven't paid attention. I don't know. Who's riding? So you're picking Roglič, Primož Roglič. This is the other thing we get corrected on all the time, is the pronunciations of these people.
Yeah, that's good.
I'll be honest, I have not invested the time to study. I will, but the start list, the course, the teams. You
talked a lot.
I will say this. You know who's interesting to me is Dumoulin, who I'm a big fan of. He has not. I read this on the internet today. He hasn't raced. He raced today, but he hadn't raced since Milan-San Remo. So he's been from Milan-San Remo until today. He's been at altitude on the island of Tenerife, which is a place that we spent months and months and months of our lives. But that without looking at it, without having looked at anything. I would pick him. Tenerife is a hard place to stay for that long. So for him to commit to that just shows you how focused he is.
Awesome, thank you.
But I do remember you talking about Roglič in particular last year, about how strong he's gotten coming from being a ski jumper in the short amount of time he's been in this sport, and how strong he's gotten.
Yeah.
He was definitely on your radar.
No, he'll be one of the top. I think we'll see how this unfolds, but he's a top 3, top 5 favorite for the Tour.
Hi, my name is Alexander Kendakov. I'm from Ukraine. Lance, have you ever been to post-Soviet republics? Are you ever planning to go there with your speeches? You are a great hero there. People worship you. And
in Ukraine?
Yeah, Ukraine.
Really?
Yeah, you're
Maybe you should go.
I should go over there.
Yeah.
Go be worshipped.
And,
is that safe? Is it safe over there?
Well, I'm coming back in 3 months, so.
Speaking of dream teams, we had a guy on our team, Yaroslav Popovic, who was from Ukraine, and Popo, P-O-P-O, we would call him Popo.
Purple.
Yeah, but he
Means
lives in
butt.
Italy now, so
It
I don't know
means
what that
butt
says about
in
Ukraine.
Russian. It means butt in Russian. Papa.
It means what?
Butt.
But he never told us that.
I wonder why.
We're calling this guy an asshole for like 10 years, and he's just letting us go along with that? Yo, what's wrong with y'all?
Well, we're modest. Modest.
Thanks for coming out.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
All right, thank you everybody for coming out.
Yeah, thanks
We
everybody
really
for coming.
Appreciate it. Back on May 10th.
We never knew that.
That's funny.